I remember thinking the trip might fix us. It was early June when Megan proposed we book a beachside villa in the Bahamas. I had just gotten off another 12-hour shift, eyes stinging from screen glare, brain sluggish from caffeine and stress. And there she was, barefoot in the kitchen, sipping from a coconut-scented smoothie and smiling like nothing had changed. She leaned against the counter, phone in hand, showing me pictures of crystal blue water and private cabanas. "It's our 10th anniversary next month," she said. "Let's do something different. Just you and me. Somewhere beautiful." That word, beautiful, hung in the air. She said it with an ease I hadn't heard in a long time. I agreed too quickly, maybe because the silence between us had grown heavier over the months. It wasn't the fighting kind of silence. It was worse than that. It was the sort of quiet that settles in like fog, soft, all-consuming, and hard to name. We were polite. We functioned. But the spark that had once defined us had been buried under layers of unspoken things. I told myself the trip would help. A week away from our routines. No laptops, no emails. Just ocean and sunlight, and whatever we remembered about each other. We landed in Nassau on a humid Tuesday morning, the sky already a brilliant white blue. Megan wore a loose white dress, her hair pulled into a messy bun. I caught myself watching her as we crossed the tarmac, the way the fabric clung to her back, the way she walked with quiet confidence. It was the same look she had when we first met, a summer internship at a publishing house in Boston, a rooftop party, cheap wine, and long talks about everything and nothing. Our villa was perched at the edge of a cliff overlooking a private beach. The walls were a soft coral pink, and the interior was designed with airy simplicity, wide windows, billowing curtains, sun-bleached wood. The sea was a constant presence, visible from every room, its sound curling into our sleep at night. We spent the first 2 days doing the things couples and magazines do. Morning swims, lazy breakfasts, reading under palm trees. Megan smiled more than I'd seen in months. She touched my arm when she laughed. She wore that blue bikini I'd forgotten she owned, and I felt something stir, old, familiar, aching. By the 3rd day, I started to believe we were healing. It was Megan's idea to book us massages. "There's a wellness center down the beach," she said, flipping through a local brochure. "Outdoor cabanas, ocean breeze, organic oils. It sounds like paradise." She handed me the pamphlet. On the cover was a man, tanned, muscular, bare-chested, pressing his palms into a woman's back under gauzy linen. His smile was serene, almost smug. "I'll go tomorrow morning," she said, casually. "You should book one too." But I had already scheduled a snorkeling trip for that day, something I'd mentioned weeks ago. She nodded, lips pursed just slightly. "Then I'll go alone. You don't mind, right?" I didn't. Not really. I kissed her forehead and told her to enjoy herself. The next morning, I watched from the villa balcony as she walked barefoot down the beach, a towel tucked under her arm, her dress flowing like smoke behind her. She didn't come back until almost noon. She was glowing. There's no other word for it. Skin flushed, eyes glassy with sun and something else. She said the massage had been unreal. Her body felt like it had been melted and reshaped. "You have to try it," she told me, curling up beside me on the outdoor daybed, her fingers brushing along my collarbone. I asked about the therapist. "His name's Luca," she said. "From Italy. He's passionate. You can tell he really cares about what he does. There's something spiritual about it." I laughed. "You sound like you joined a cult." But there was a flicker of something in her eyes. A hesitation. It vanished quickly, replaced by a laugh of her own. I didn't push. That night, we made love for the first time in nearly 2 months. She was wild, hungry, like a woman possessed. She pulled me into her rhythm like a wave dragging driftwood. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was with someone I had to win back. I felt claimed. Afterward, I lay in bed, listening to the ocean and the hum of the ceiling fan, my arm wrapped around her waist. She was already asleep, breathing slow and steady. I didn't sleep. There was something about the way she touched me that night. Something new. The next morning, I noticed her phone buzzing while she was in the shower. A message preview flashed on the screen. "Luca, can't stop thinking about yesterday." I didn't open the full message. I didn't need to. For hours, I sat outside, watching the waves. The sun painted the water gold. Seagulls drifted overhead, their cries sharp and distant. My coffee turned cold in my hands. When Megan emerged, hair damp, wearing that same loose dress. I looked at her like a man waking from a dream. I'm heading back to the wellness center, she said lightly. They have these deep tissue sessions I want to try. I forced a nod. Enjoy. She kissed my cheek. Her lips lingered just a second too long. Or maybe not long enough. As she disappeared down the trail, barefoot again, towel over her arm, I knew something was happening. Something real. Something I couldn't stop. I waited an hour. Then I followed. I didn't know what I expected to see. Maybe her walking back with sea salt in her hair and a contented smile. Maybe just a confirmation that I was being paranoid. Instead, I found the cabana, tucked behind a row of palms, white curtains billowing in the wind. And I heard them. Laughter. Low. Intimate. Voices. Megan's. And a man's. My heartbeat turned thunderous. I crept closer, footsteps silent in the sand, and peered through the narrow slit between the curtains. There she was, straddling the massage table, her back arched, eyes closed, lips parted. Her hands roamed along his shoulders, down his chest. He stood behind her, shirtless, his hands on her hips, whispering something into her ear. She wasn't just cheating. She was consumed. And I, standing in the shadows, couldn't look away. I didn't go back to the villa right away. After what I saw, after watching Megan wrapped around another man like she'd forgotten who she was, I walked the length of the beach until my legs ached and my throat felt raw from the salty air. The tide kissed the shore again and again like it couldn't bear to leave, a rhythm that mocked the chaos now spiraling inside me. There's something about betrayal that doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in, like seawater soaking through the hem of your jeans, unnoticed until you feel the weight. I had loved Megan with the quiet steadiness of someone who didn't think they'd ever need to question love. We weren't perfect, but I'd thought we were real, rooted. I kept trying to convince myself that maybe I'd misinterpreted the scene, that maybe the embrace I saw was just something innocent, cultural, even. Luca was Italian, after all. But the curve of her spine, the way she leaned into him, the intimate hush between their voices, none of that belonged to a stranger's hands. And I had seen her before she left the villa. She hadn't worn a bra. She hadn't packed a towel this time. It wasn't a massage. By the time I made it back, the sun was beginning its descent, gilding everything in orange and soft lavender. Megan wasn't back yet. Her sandals were still gone from the porch. I sat on the steps for nearly 20 minutes before I heard her laughter, light and careless, carried on the wind. When she walked up the path, cheeks flushed, hair tousled, I forced myself to stay still. She smiled at me as if nothing had changed. "Miss me?" she asked, stepping barefoot onto the porch, brushing sand from her legs. I said nothing. I watched her. She stood there, waiting for something. Maybe a kiss, maybe a question, but when I only nodded slightly and turned back toward the sea, she shrugged and went inside. That night, she curled into me under the covers, her body still warm from the shower. Her breath tickled my chest, and she whispered, "I love you," in that slow, sleepy voice that used to undo me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above us, counting the seconds between each beat of her breath. I didn't sleep. The next day, I made a decision. I needed to know the truth. I needed to hear it from her, even if it broke me. When Megan went to shower after breakfast, I opened her phone. The password hadn't changed. My hands didn't shake. Not until I saw his name again. Luca. Their messages weren't frequent, but they didn't need to be. The tone was enough. "Can still feel you on my hands. Let me know if you're sore after yesterday. I can help with that. You taste like salt and honey." And Megan's replies, "You ruin me. Same time tomorrow?" He still has no idea. My breath caught in my throat. The world narrowed to a pinprick. It was one thing to suspect, another to know. I closed the phone just as she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping down her shoulders. "Thinking of going into town?" I said casually, folding the edge of a blanket. She raised an eyebrow. "Without me?" I shrugged. "Figured I'd give you some alone time. You've seemed peaceful lately." She looked at me for a beat too long, then smiled. "Okay, I might just nap on the beach." I nodded. "Sounds good." I didn't go into town. I walked the beach again, staying just out of sight of the cabana. I didn't want to see it happen again. Not today. Instead, I sat under a palm, not far from the rocks, and tried to remember the first time Megan ever touched my hand. We were in line for coffee, and her fingers brushed mine as she reached for the same pastry. She had smiled, that quick, disarming smile that made my heart stammer. I hadn't realized it at the time, but that moment had changed the course of my life. Now I wondered if it had just delayed the inevitable. When I returned to the villa around sunset, Megan was waiting for me on the porch. She wore a different dress now, black, sleeveless, modest, and her eyes searched mine with something like caution. "How was town?" she asked. "Colorful," I said. She nodded. "You missed a great day for swimming." "I'll bet." We ate dinner on the patio in silence. The wine between us remained untouched. At one point, I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw how she avoided my gaze. Her fingers trembled slightly as she cut her food. It almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. Later that night, I walked down to the shoreline alone. The moon cast a silver sheen across the water, and the wind tugged at my shirt like a restless child. I crouched at the edge of the surf and picked up a shell, white, spiraled, nearly perfect. And I thought, we were nearly perfect once. Behind me, I heard footsteps. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. I didn't turn. No. Megan stood beside me, arms folded across her chest. Her dress fluttered around her legs, and her skin glowed pale in the moonlight. "I feel like something's wrong," she said. I exhaled slowly. "That's because it is." She looked at me. I could feel her eyes burning into the side of my face. "Talk to me." I finally turned. "Why don't you tell me about Luca?" The silence that followed wasn't shocked. It wasn't defensive. It was resigned. Her shoulders sagged, and her lips parted, then closed again. She looked out at the water. "I didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed, but it was hollow. "That's a classic line." She winced. I didn't plan it. It was just, I felt alive again. Seen. And I know how that sounds, but you didn't feel alive with me? She hesitated. "You were always steady. Safe. I needed something different." "Different?" My voice was low now. "So you found it between linen sheets and ocean breeze." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you." "Then why did you keep going back?" Her mouth opened, but no words came. She turned away, arms hugging herself. I stood there, wind biting at my skin, and realized there was nothing left to say. I left her there by the water. Back in the villa, I packed a small bag. My flight home wasn't for another 2 days, but I no longer cared. I found a local hotel, small, quiet, on the far side of the island. As I walked away from the villa, I didn't look back. Some things are better left behind. The hotel I found was nothing like the villa. No private beach, no gauzy drapes or curated aromatherapy. It sat at the end of a gravel road lined with rustling palms. Its stucco walls faded from sun and salt. The room smelled faintly of bleach and distant mildew, but I didn't care. It had a lock, a bed, and silence. For the first time in days, I slept. Not well, but deeply, like my body had finally given itself permission to shut down. When I woke, the sunlight was sharp and hostile. I stared at the ceiling, motionless, my arms folded across my chest like a corpse. A part of me wanted to cry, but nothing came. Just that weight in my ribs, heavy and unmoving. I didn't know what to do next. I had no plan. We were supposed to leave the island together in 2 days. We'd arrived back in Boston, tan and smiling, pretending to the world that our marriage had survived a decade. We'd go back to our house, our jobs, the performance of stability. Now, I couldn't even picture her face without feeling something brittle snap inside me. Around noon, I walked into town. I found a small cafe tucked between souvenir shops and surfboard rentals. I sat in the back, ordered black coffee, and stared out the window at couples laughing under the sun. It was surreal how normal everything looked. My phone buzzed twice before I picked it up. "Megan, 1:14 p.m., please talk to me." 1:20 p.m., "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I turned the phone over. The last time I had seen her, she was crying beneath the moonlight, saying she hadn't meant to hurt me. But even now, after everything, I wasn't sure if the tears were for me or for the guilt of being caught. By sunset, I found myself back at the beach. Not our beach, not the one with the pink villa and the cabana draped in secrecy. This was a public strip, cluttered with families and laughter, volleyball nets and plastic buckets. I sat in the sand, shoes off, jeans rolled to the knee. The surf foamed against my legs. I thought about the version of me who had stepped off the plane just 4 days ago. Hopeful. Naive. He didn't exist anymore. I didn't know how long I sat there before a voice broke through the wind. "You look like you're trying to blend in with the tide." I looked up. The man was older, maybe in his 60s, sun-worn with skin like leather and eyes that had seen things. He held a fishing pole in one hand and a half-empty beer in the other. Something like that, I muttered. He plopped down beside me like we were old friends. You lose someone? I said nothing. He nodded, as if that was answer enough. Alan has a way of showing people who they really are. Sometimes you don't like what you see. I glanced at him. Did it show you? He smiled without humor. Yeah. 30 years ago. Wife left me for a dive instructor. Said she found freedom in his wetsuit. I exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. Stay long enough, and the ocean strips away whatever you're trying to hide, he said, tapping his chest. Even from yourself. I didn't ask his name. When he stood and wandered off, it felt like he'd said everything I needed to hear. Later that night, I returned to the villa. I don't know why. Maybe part of me needed closure. Maybe part of me needed to see if she was still there. The lights were on. I could see her silhouette moving behind the curtains, slow, restless, like someone pacing. I knocked once. The door opened a few seconds later. Megan stood there barefoot, wearing the oversized t-shirt she used to sleep in. Her eyes were puffy, rimmed red. Her hair was a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept. You came back, she whispered. I said nothing. She stepped aside, letting me in without a word. The villa was exactly as we'd left it. Our luggage still in the corner, her book half finished on the coffee table. But the air was heavier now, weighted with things unsaid. I ended it, she said finally. With Luca. I raised an eyebrow. That was fast. She flinched. I told him not to contact me again. I told him it was a mistake. Was it? Her lips parted, then closed. I don't know. That honesty, bitter as it was, hit harder than any denial would have. I'm not here to argue, I said, voice low. I just need answers. She sat on the couch, curling into herself. I didn't plan any of this. I swear to you, when we came here, I wanted to fix things. I thought if we got away from everything, maybe we'd find each other again. I stood by the sliding door, watching the waves crash in the distance. And you found someone else instead. It wasn't like that. I wasn't looking. She trailed off. He saw me, in a way I hadn't felt seen in a long time. I turned then, slowly. And I didn't see you? She blinked, tears threatening. Not like he did. Not like I wanted. I nodded slowly. The silence between us thickened. I never stopped loving you, she said, voice cracking. But you stopped choosing me. Her face crumpled. She covered her mouth with her hand, like she could trap the sob trying to escape. I wanted to feel something. Anger, sadness, even pity, but all I felt was tired. You've hurt me more than I ever thought possible, I said. And the worst part? I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't know who I am either, she whispered. There was a long pause. A beat where it felt like everything might collapse under its own weight. I'm flying out tomorrow, I said. You can take the original flight, or not. I don't care. She looked up sharply. You're leaving? I have to. For me. She didn't follow me when I walked to the guest room. I closed the door gently behind me and leaned against it, listening for any sound. There was none. When the sun rose, I left before she woke. The flight home was quiet. I didn't bring much back with me. Just a small duffel, my passport, and a weight in my chest that felt heavier than anything in the overhead compartment. I stared out the window most of the ride, watching clouds shift like pulled cotton over the Atlantic. The seat beside me stayed empty. I didn't know if Megan was still on the island. I hadn't asked. I hadn't checked. For the first time in a decade, I didn't feel responsible for her choices. When I landed in Boston, the air was cooler than I remembered. Not cold, just muted. Like the city was easing me back into reality. I took a cab home. The driver didn't talk much, just the way I liked it. The moment I stepped through the front door of our house. No, my house now. The silence wrapped around me like a shroud. Dust hung in the late afternoon sunbeams, slanting through the windows. The living room looked untouched, like we had only stepped out for a weekend trip. But I had returned changed. I stood in the foyer for a long time, keys still in my hand, before walking into the kitchen. Her mug was still on the counter, the one that said Dog Mom, even though we never had a dog. She'd bought it on a whim after a winery tour. I had always teased her about it. Now, I didn't even want to touch it. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed we had shared for years and stared at my own reflection in the dark glass of the bedroom window. I looked older than I had just a week ago. My eyes were tired. There were lines I hadn't noticed before. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. What I felt was closer to grief, but grief with a purpose. The next morning, I began sorting through the remnants of our life. Not as an act of erasure, but as a ritual. Old vacation photos, her clothes in the dresser, the framed anniversary picture from our trip to Italy. I boxed everything carefully. I didn't destroy it. I wasn't looking for vengeance. Just space. 3 days after my return, a courier delivered an envelope to my door. Inside, a handwritten letter. It was from Megan. I'm not sure if I should be writing this, or if you'll even read it, but I wanted to say goodbye properly, the way I should have before. I stayed on the island for a few days after you left. I needed time. I needed distance from everything, even myself. Luca is gone. I ended that the moment I realized what I had become. He didn't love me. He loved the version of me who needed to be saved. And I mistook that for something deeper. What I did was unforgivable. I know that now. Not just the betrayal, but the lies I told you, and the ones I told myself. I became someone I don't recognize. You were always steady, always kind, and I thought I needed chaos. I thought passion had to be dangerous to be real. I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm not even asking for it. But I hope, one day, when the sting has faded, you'll remember something good about us. We did have love once. I know it wasn't all a lie. I've signed the divorce papers. I've waived any claim to the house. You deserve your peace. Goodbye, Nathan. Megan. I read it once. Then again. And then I put it in a drawer without a word. It was the closure I didn't realize I needed. Weeks passed. I returned to work, but nothing felt the same. I found myself walking to the lake near our neighborhood most evenings, a place Megan never liked. I'd sit by the water until the sun dipped low and the air turned cool. Something about the stillness helped. It reminded me that not everything beautiful was fleeting. One Saturday morning, I received a message from a mutual friend, someone who didn't know the details, just that Megan had left. She mentioned seeing her in a small coastal town in Oregon, volunteering at a shelter. Said she looked different. I didn't respond. I didn't ask for more. I had no need to follow her anymore. It took time, more time than I wanted to admit. But slowly, the wound scabbed over. The bed no longer felt foreign. The silence stopped screaming. I began filling the house with small signs of new life. A new coffee maker, a bookshelf I built myself, a rescue dog named Jasper who barked at the vacuum and followed me like a shadow. I wasn't healed. Not fully, but I was healing. And there's a quiet triumph in that. One day, I stumbled upon that shell I'd picked up from the beach, the white, spiraled one I held when everything was falling apart. I'd forgotten it was in my bag. I turned it over in my hand, marveling at how something so fragile could survive the crushing weight of the ocean. I placed it on the windowsill in the bedroom, not as a memory of her, but as a reminder of me. I survived the tide.